Yeah, okay, so we chose perspectives, which was very fascinating. I mean, it's an option to see things from lots of different points of view. And as a former journalist, I love, hearing different people's opinions and marrying them together and remembering to be objective. So, that really fit with my skills that I brought into the course. And also, just was fascinating in general. So we went with perspectives, and the digital tools we used were mind map, which was very new for me. Had not heard of that before. My partner had, so that was great. A new skill for me as well, or a new resource. And we used SoundCloud as well, which was really exciting to actually bring to life ourselves as students once we got to do the exemplar model of that. And those were two that we thought would bring historical thinking alive and visible to learners of different types of learning styles. Originally with the mind map, we wanted to make it visual in a sense, but also wholesome. So we're incorporating, all the findings that the students were able to bring together in one consolidated visual piece, be it their mind map. And with that particular tool, we were able to create something that other groups could then access other particular groups' mind maps, so they get familiar with various perspectives of the of Agrippina, as it was in our case. And also that was something being, using ICT, you can project that onto the whiteboard. All the students, can benefit from that. And ultimately it was just the wholesome aspect of the mind map. And then for the SoundCloud, we wanted to come up with something innovative and something that, was visible to auditory learners as well. So not just those who are visual, but auditory. And we thought this would be an awesome way because, it brings it alive to those that like to listen. But also we, as part of our assessment, required a transcript. So that also brings it to life in that format and makes that visible too. And we decided we wanted an innovative way that was going to appeal to a variety of different learning styles. And I mean, even with that podcast, my partner and I were in the back seat of her car in the Westwood car park, filming a little exemplary interview for our submission. And so there's a little bodily kinesthetic in there as well. We were kind of crammed in. It was all very humorous. And so that was what led us to those two particular digital tools. Just bringing perspectives alive again to learners of all different learning styles. But the task itself lent itself fabulously to that because it meant we could look at making historical thinking visible, and that allowed us to demonstrate perspectives in different ways. Also, just building off my own personal knowledge of perspectives, I had to revisit what it was in its sense and look at some literature that actually explains what does perspectives mean when it is made visible in the classroom. So that was a 3-tiered process from the literature I read, and it was about comprehending the sources and then establishing the perspectives from those sources and then actually analysing those sources. So it was that 3-step process, and equipping myself with the skills to best educate the students on how to do that was a challenge that I had to overcome throughout the project. And the ways that I did that was through collaboration mostly. So my partner was very knowledgeable. She was the ancient history specialist, and I the modern. So we were able to work together collegially and help myself overcome those challenges. The strengths for me personally as a student within the MTeach course, I would find would be exposing myself to an area of history that I hadn't really covered before. I mean, for me, a challenge throughout this history curriculum was bits and pieces of history that I wasn't aware of because it was my minor area. And so a strength for me was to be paired with a really awesome, intelligent partner, and we actually looked at ancient history, and my area is modern. So I got to learn a lot about Agrippina the Younger and familiarise myself with the ancient history syllabus. And for me, that was a godsend, especially going into a second prac and an internship, to be able to have exposure to those areas that were completely foreign to me, and as foreign to me as they were the students that I could be possibly teaching later that year, was one of the greatest strengths for me personally, I found, in being able to complete this task. Yeah, the feedback we received allowed us to make some small tweaks. I mean, we, as the designers of the task, we were very passionate about what we brought up, and we were quite proud of what we brought up as well and posted. And there were some little tweaks and whatnot that we were able to do to just fine-tune, mostly. And that was probably the biggest benefit, was to be able to say, here's something we're proud of. Okay, now there's little bits and pieces, ironically, from other perspectives that we can actually, approach and integrate into what we already have. to make it even better. And I think that was the biggest part of the feedback. Things like the lesson plans that we presented, being more reasonable with the time we allocated. And someone pointed out to us that students didn't really receive much opportunity to look at modern sources of Agrippina the Younger in the build-up to that assessment task. And we went, oh yeah, and that's really important because that's a big part of that 750-word written response that we had as our assessment task. So we rejigged our lesson plan to dedicate an activity or 35 minutes to that particular aspect of student skills, so looking at the modern sources. So yeah, it was just great to have another point of view. And something that, opens up your mind, or I guess views the assessment task from a different point of view and therefore sees other ways of growth in it that we personally weren't able to. I learned to be constructive, I think. And again, with history being the minor area, it was kind of put me in a funny position because I was here judging other people's work and I was bit of a foreigner, really. I've only really been focusing on, history intensely and teaching it for a year and a half. So, and obviously there's people in our class and course who are history buffs. So it was a humbling experience for me, but I wanted to make sure I was very certain in providing constructive feedback. So I guess I just approached that as a way of brushing up on my own knowledge of history, and then how can I just strengthen their work? What can I do to strengthen it? And that might not necessarily be through the execution of content, but through the pedagogy and the ways of teaching it. And the activities as such, rather than, I suppose, you've got your focus on your historical skill, and then you focus on executing that in the classroom. And so that was a strength I felt like I could bring to other people's groups. Maybe not my content knowledge, but my pedagogical knowledge. And that was an enjoyable process and part of the assessment task as well, being able to apply that knowledge and do that for our peers. Yeah, I guess the biggest change in my understanding of perspectives was that each one is as valid as the next when you're looking at history. And I guess beyond that, it's about then investigating or digging deeper within the surface of the perspective and investigating why that exists and what the, implications were for everyone within that historical context. And I guess getting beyond that superficial idea of perspectives, and I too myself, as a minor area, I, am relatively new to, or was relatively new to, all of the historical concepts. So to be able to look specifically at one and really hone in and see how I could bring that to life in the classroom and do it in a safe environment, so it's uni where I could be mentored and helped in actually bringing that together, that was comforting. And by the end, I just saw the value in making sure students actually are equipped with the skills to actually assess these perspectives. So not just say, this is this one, but what did that actually mean? And how did that affect the events at that time? That was, just, I guess, deepened my understanding of the perspectives as a historical concept. What I realized is how easy it was to subtly integrate these concepts into your tasks and your pedagogy. I guess before then I thought I'd really have to make an effort to design, a part of a lesson that was focused on teaching kids perspectives and contestability and cause and effect. But I realized that there are ways to very subtly integrate that into your pedagogy. And sure, you can point them out explicitly as you go with the kids, but there's almost always an opportunity to address one of those concepts when you are teaching history. And that just made me mindful going into an internship where I would be teaching history that, make sure I'm making those links explicit even when they're not explicit. And that way just developing students' knowledge and understanding of those concepts and their confidence in being able to express their thoughts and opinions and knowledge of those concepts. Do you know what? Yes, it just forced me to think outside the square. I mean, when we got into this assessment task, make historical thinking visible, that's not something in terms of history we'd really thought about. We think about educating and sharing knowledge, but actually making it visible. So that pushed us beyond our boundaries to try and think up innovative, quirky ways that are going to be engaging for the kids as well and make this historical thinking visible. And then there's a whole avenue of extra benefits and activities you can do and build upon once you have that thinking visible. So you can even extend beyond the original task you set to make that thinking visible. So going in, I just was able to think more broadly about how I'm going to take history content and make it enticing and engaging and alive for the students. Okay, 2 pieces of advice. Firstly, choose a great partner. Choose someone you work really well with, or someone, even in my case, like my case, choose someone in an area of history that's not your own. So you can, develop your knowledge further through that. And also keep some kind of, whether it's a reflection journal or a series of post-it notes on a wall, just something that you can use as a prompt later on in the semester. So when you do have to go back and revisit the task, you can just turn to that prompt and refresh your memory nice and quickly, rather than sort of scratch through your laptop and find the assignment and read through everything you've written and go the long way around it. Just be really smart about the small things that you do along the way to make sure that there's that ease of continuity throughout the assessment task.